Hi, everyone, and welcome to our final episode of Consultants Corner. I am waiting for my guest, Alex Head. So just bear with us. This is the second time this has happened this week, actually. There is a pattern, but she'll be joining us shortly. So I hope something hasn't happened. So just bear with us. Let me just pop some music on while we wait for Alex to connect.
Hi, Maxine. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. Let me
Good.
just pause.
Is that my music? No.
That's my music. I just
Hi.
wanted to just put some holding music on before you join.
Perfect. Sorry, I was a bit late.
Not to worry, I literally just got here with a couple of minutes to spare as well. So
Perfect.
I was glad that you weren't waiting in the wings.
No, don't worry.
How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really well, really well. This is you are actually our final session for this for
Okay.
2023.
Great.
So I'm really, really happy that you're here. Okay, so let me just do an introduction for our audience. So basically, in today's era where collaboration and partnerships becoming more prevalent and important, it is our belief that open narrative and sharing of ideas is vital. The industry possesses some exceptional operators, consultants, and contractors, and our aim is to bring greater insights into the thinking which can often lie hidden away. I'm here with Alex Head. I'm Maxine Crow, your host, and this is our final Consultants Corner before Christmas.
Yeah, we should be having a celebratory drink.
Well, we should have got the mulled wine out.
Exactly.
Okay, so Alex, just introduce yourself to the audience and just tell us a bit about your journey in the industry.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Alex Head and I own and run Social Pantry, and we're an events and contract catering company with a couple of sites, and our kind of main USPs are sustainability. So kind of leading the way in sustainable thinking within the food, within catering, and then employing ex-offenders as well.
That's quite interesting. What motivated you to actually create Social Pantry? What was it that what was the moment when you thought I really want to do something unique and just stand out in the industry?
Yes, I think so basically I started it in 2011, I think, so kind of well over 10 years ago, and I've been working in the hospitality industry for a number of years. I was I'd always kind of been interested in food, as I was excited by food, and I had kind of worked in a lot of kitchens, I'd worked in some restaurants, and actually it was when one of the restaurants I was working for closed down that I actually thought, you know what, it's now or never. I'm going to make the leap and kind of turn what was this side hustle, this kind of like catering and saying yes to a few parties, catering for a few things or filling the freezer with ready meals, for various clients. I kind of took that kind of slight hobby side project and thought, I'm going to start a business now of my own, because I ultimately thought, you know what, if it goes wrong, I'll go back to kind of working in the industry. I'll go back to chefing, running restaurants, managing restaurants, or kind of waitressing. So I kind of took the leap back in 2011 and went back to waitressing then, just to kind of, keep, I suppose, just, until I had enough jobs to kind of fully commit to Social Pantry. So I kind of had a bit of a hybrid initially. But yeah, I suppose it was a bit of a crossroads. And I thought, what have I got to lose?
Yeah, absolutely. And what was it always for ex-offenders, or did it evolve into being ex-offenders?
It evolved into that. So I think it was in 2013 or 2015. 2015, I think, that
Mm,
I was mentoring a gentleman called Ruben, who was brilliant. And it's to a charity called Key for Life. And Ruben actually was my first ever prison visit. And I was so nervous going in to see him. But we kind of bonded over giving up smoking. Both of us struggling with that. So we chatted about that, because on the way into prison, I was thinking, gosh, what am I going to talk to him about? But we just found such, a few bits of common ground. And ultimately, he's just a really easy, likable guy to get on with. And so it was through that charity that they kind of then asked me to employ one of the other prison leavers. So I said, yes, sure, why not? And
mm,
then, so that was Suhail, and he was our first ever prison leaver that we employed. And he had a bit of a rocky start,
mm.
where he was in 3 days a week, and he was a bit non-committal and didn't really show up. And I kind of pulled him aside and said, listen, I've only got, a small team here. This is, I've worked really hard to get here. So you either need to kind of commit or let us fill the role with somebody else that does want to be here. And
Yeah,
he committed, and he was with us for about 5 years, which was great.
yeah, yeah. That's absolutely amazing. Um,
Yeah.
just in terms of some transparency and new thinking, how do you think the narrative has shifted in the industry from traditional to new thinking?
Yeah, of course. I think what's with the pandemic, I think that was a real catalyst for change. I think pre-pandemic, it was, the industry is challenging for a number of reasons. You've got very low margin.
Yeah,
It's always challenging to kind of recruit, because a lot of the workforce is transient. People kind of might be in the hospitality industry for a summer, or while they're at uni, or while they're, got a side job, or while they're just
yeah,
traveling the world. So ultimately, the industry has kind of a number of challenges, but it was the pandemic that I suppose that really kind of stressed those, kind of, I suppose, put pressure on it. And
mm,
that's when, we always kind of have to keep thinking. We've always had to think quite creatively, or I have anyway, kind of with Social Pantry. And so I suppose, how do we do things? That was all kind of reassessed in COVID. Like, how do we get people back into this brilliant industry? How do we kind of retain people? How do we recruit them? How do we get the best people? How do we get the best talent?
yeah,
So I think, kind of, I suppose the workforce, you've got to have quite a creative approach to that. And then ultimately as well, it's kind of, the rise of social media and reviewing, and, accessibility, and, people kind of food influencers. And then you've also got the rise of sustainability. So as an operator, it's really making sure that you're kind of, I suppose, always being as forward thinking as possible. But there's a number of challenges that are always being presented,
yeah.
pandemic or not, within the industry. So it's kind of overcoming those and working out how best to tackle those, which I think is where most of my time as a boss and a CEO kind of go. That's where I spend most of my time.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how have you overcome them? What strategies can you share with the audience, just as some learning for them from your
Yeah. I mean,
experience?
ultimately, I think yeah, I think ultimately I've always kind of been running a growing business, and that's always quite challenging. So at no point are we kind of sitting still, kind of, being like, okay, cool, this is all comfortable. We've got the right amount of
Mm,
people for the right demand of business. For us, we're kind of constantly growing. We've got quite a visible brand. We're often in the press. We're quite forward thinking with our ex-offender employment, and again with sustainability. So we are quite a well-known brand, and it's taken a decade or so to kind of, really to establish that. So, but
mm,
it's a great position to be in. And I think, I suppose with by kind of putting yourself in the limelight, you've just got to constantly kind of prove yourself. You've got to constantly strive and overcome things. And I think there is it's just endlessly challenging. I think ultimately there's a lot of external influences. So there
yeah,
might be kind of Ukraine. I mean, for something like us, the Queen dying, or the coronation, like that kind of threw a spanner in the works. Sometimes global warming is really tricky when it comes to kind of the cost of some of the food, and,
yeah,
kind of spiking kind of, sunflower seeds went up. So it can be, when Ukraine, so there's all sorts of external influences, but obviously within the industry as well, you've got a number of challenges. So I think for me personally with Social Pantry, where we're always growing as a business, there's always a few growing pains. And ultimately it will be, I suppose, recruiting far enough in advance to make sure that you're never kind of fully overstretched. But then that's challenging because you don't want to have kind of, too heavy a team for kind of, the
Yeah,
level of business. It's also making sure that you've got enough kitchen space and enough office space. And so when you're kind of constantly growing and recruiting, it's just trying to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
yeah,
But sometimes due to the nature of it, it's not that's not always possible. But I think also being really reactive, being able to pivot and actually I suppose, yes, stay ahead of it when actually the external influences are also having an impact. I think that's really important as well.
yeah. I'm absolutely fascinated in terms of. So where are you actually based as a business, or just talk about your operation and how
Yeah.
you work where you are as
So
well. So,
we're based down in Battersea, and I've got a full-time team of about 65 staff. So there's three kind of arms to the business. So there's sites where I've got a 70-seater restaurant and a 30-seater cafe and design centre in Chelsea Harbour, and that's kind of running that for a client there. Then I've also got a standalone cafe on Lavender Hill. So that's the sites. Then in the middle, we've kind of got workplace, which is offices. So kind of it's a Monday to Friday operation. We will either be in-house at law firms, delivering in daily to tech firms, or we'll be delivering kind of ad hoc once a week, once a month to kind of firms where an employer is trying to get their team back to the office. So kind of there's a lot of focus now on workplace well-being, of how do we retain our staff, how do we make it exciting, how do we get them back to work, how do we get them to work with us and not the competitors. So ultimately we present ourselves as a workplace partner, so we'll be having that holistic approach of, okay, what does get these guys back in the office? And obviously from our point of view, it's food, and a healthy, nutritious lunch is exactly what we provide. So kind of seasonal, delicious food is kind of what we do. So we'll do about kind of 60 drops a week, or kind of 60 lunches a week for various offices. And then we have events. So the events is, I suppose, the larger percentage of the business at the moment.
yeah,
And that is a combination of private events, corporate events that happen in big venues in London. So tonight we're at Saatchi Gallery. We've been at the National Portrait Gallery twice this week. We've been at Guildhall. We've been at Old Sessions House. And that team of events, they will do about 40 events a week on average. So that's kind of pretty serious operation. So with each event, you've got a different loading bay and styling and menu and team and budget and uniform. And so, yeah, that just kind of, and that's a 7-day operation that kind of goes around the clock.
yeah. So how do you manage the work-life balance as an operator? And you talk about well-being. How do you, as an operator, ensure the well-being of your teams as well across the different specialisms that you have in Social Pantry?
Yeah. It's so challenging. Like, I think, and this is where you have to get quite creative. It's definitely really challenging. Like it's hard when we're in an industry that's kind of got such, such low margins. So it's really, really challenging. It's not, you kind of haven't got the luxury of kind of, I suppose all the comforts that you might have if you're working in other industries. And ultimately it's the entertainment industry. When everybody's partying, we're working. So, that's the reality of it. So it really takes a group of really passionate people, but all of my team are intelligent, hardworking, diligent. They are, absolute professionals, and they are just so good. So we try and keep a work-life balance, but naturally, I suppose that's not always totally possible. But yeah, effective management, effective communication, kind of knowing the limits, understanding kind of, the capacity of certain teams, understanding where the pinch points are, looking ahead at the week and the month and the year and saying, okay, right, this is where there's going to be challenges. How do we do that? It's having a leadership team that are really engaged and experienced enough to kind of foresee any challenges, and ultimately kind of, a great HR department, that kind of develops that culture where there's good communication, good reviews, good line management, so that the team kind of can put their hand up and say, hey, I've actually got a really busy week and this is too much. Or, so yeah, I think, and it's being effective with kind of days in lieu, making sure we're quite strict that if you worked a 6-day week, that day off, you need to take the following week. So you have a shorter week, because we don't want that to be kept for a few weeks time. We need you to recuperate. We need you to kind of have that day off, have that downtime, and then kind of, come back, with the benefits of that, feeling fresh. So
Yeah.
it's not always possible to get it right, and we're always learning. And I think I'm always quite open about the fact that, like, we're constantly evolving, but it's definitely something that is really front of mind for myself, and as a boss in an industry that can be kind of relentlessly challenging and hard. So yeah, we're always kind of thinking, how can we do it better? And that feedback and comms with the team is a great way of kind of developing our knowledge on that.
Just thinking about transparency as an as an operator, where you have the clients, you have consultants, and then yourself as an operator, what do you feel the industry could benefit from to make it more transparent and improve the collaboration between the client, consultants, and like yourself as an operator?
Yeah, I think for myself, we're always kind of looking at the relationship. So for us, I suppose I'm quite new to kind of networking and being in an industry where there's a lot of operators who've been there for a long time and who are brilliant and doing an incredible job. And I've kind of, I suppose, broken into the workplace market. The events side of it, we're quite established, we're quite well known now, which is great. And there's a lot of market share. There's enough market share on both sides for all of us. But I suppose just keeping the conversations really open, I think, is what's important. We work with a number of consultants and agents, and they're all brilliant. They kind of bring different elements. Some agents we work with bring us business, and actually for some agents we kind of go out to business. But I suppose creating an industry that we're all really proud of is something that I always want to do, and having transparency, clear lines of communication, and ultimately getting the end consumer to understand what paying a fair price is. I think for us, we've kind of grown up a bit as a business, and we've kind of learned to say no when something, when a client doesn't kind of, or doesn't quite have the budget, or won't pay, and won't pay kind of what we're kind of, ultimately we know that with our product and the suppliers we're using, and the experience of the team that we're using, we know that we have to charge a certain amount. We're definitely not the cheapest caterer out there, but we're not the most expensive either. And actually at points in the past, I would have said yes to jobs just to kind of, I suppose, have the business. Whereas now actually it's kind of saying, no, do you know what? I'm so sorry. This is what it's going to cost us. We can't compromise on our margin because it's already quite tight. So you can take it or leave it. So I think having kind of consultants and clients and agents and venues that understand that is I think really important, because then we can use the best quality produce. We can use, the best staff. We can pay a fair price to further back in the supply chain, which is just really important. Whereas when a big corporate client who we know has got a lot of money is putting the pressure on to kind of cut the budgets, but wants the same experience or the same level of service, I sometimes find that slightly frustrating. And I think, hey, we need to. So I think having everybody on that same page, the operators, the consultants as well, and kind of saying, this is what it costs. We're not here making, obscene amounts of money. Otherwise that would be completely unethical. Like, we're here to say, this is what's fair. And this then means that we can pay our suppliers fairly. So I think just the conversations and the transparency and that kind of networking and relationships, I think keeping that all positive and just understanding that, these operators are good, to be able to deliver what we do day in, day out, it is absolutely relentless. And that needs to be respected, and we shouldn't try and compromise on cost, or shouldn't be asked to, because otherwise I suppose it's just not conducive to anything really.
Yeah, I completely agree. And being in a position of procurement, and then you're working in the service industry and procuring services as well. And I feel that the industry has changed, in that there's now more opportunity for you to go to a client and say, with inflation, with the climate as it is, they're more susceptible to price increases. Is that what you found?
Yes, I think there is that opportunity, except there is obviously it's a really fine line, because it's a really competitive industry as well. So ultimately, where it's events and it's one-off, obviously with kind of workplace and contracts, you're kind of locked in, and you've got a negotiating window, and it might be an annual review, it might be a quarterly review, and you've got that kind of price review legally locked in. But when it comes to events that are one-off, and you might have quoted 12 months out, you do have kind of terms and conditions that kind of allow you to go back and revisit the price. But ultimately, you just want to avoid doing that, because especially with something as sensitive as a wedding, like if the client thinks they're paying X amount to then go back and say, hi, actually, sorry, it's now going to cost us more. It's just a really fine line. So something like London Living Wage, which is coming in April, we now can cost that in because we know it. We cost that in for any quotes coming in, post April. We can cut, so we're not going to then lose the margin or have to go back to the clients and say, actually, sorry, you need to pay a little bit more. So it's really difficult. And also it is competitive. Like there's a lot of brilliant operators out there. And actually, if we just stayed firm on everything the whole time, then you're at the risk of kind of nobody ever saying yes. So you do have to balance it. And there is a slight room to play around with those margins, but really not as much as you need sometimes. So I think it is a conversation. It just has to be, it has to be the right conversation. And sometimes people are really receptive to it and completely understand. And sometimes people aren't. And that's where it's a bit challenging. So I think we're always kind of growing and learning on something like that.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your role?
Oh, what is the most valuable lesson? I was having a little think about this earlier. There's so many. I think ultimately, I'm always just really honest about what I've got wrong. I mean, I've got enough right to still be in business, as you don't really get like an appraisal or a, feedback, or, you don't get that as a CEO, and it's actually quite hard. So you don't have anybody saying, well done, ever, but that's not why we're not kind of there to say that. But I think ultimately, the more confidence I get and the longer Social Pantry's been running and the more successes we're having, I do think, okay, that's the kind of appraisal. But it's also being so true and transparent and clear when you get it wrong. It's like saying, okay, I've got this wrong. Let's dissect it. What could we have done better? What could I have done better? And actually having a leadership team around you that you can be really honest with and they can be really honest back. I think that for me is like the most useful tool, is kind of when I've potentially done something, got it wrong, actually dissecting it with the people around me and saying, okay, well, how could we have got that right, or how could we have approached that differently, or how would the end result have, what else do we all think? So I think just don't worry if you're kind of, if you make mistakes, it's totally fine. And even if if you make it again, just keep learning and keep assessing, and don't let that kind of I suppose dampen your enthusiasm or your risk taking kind of energy, because I think at some points decisions that you don't get right shouldn't kind of shouldn't damage your confidence. So I think the most valuable thing really is kind of always learning from your mistakes, I suppose.
Thanks Alex, that's really valuable. It's invaluable. Let's talk a bit about sustainability and in what ways has the focus on sustainability changed the landscape of the industry over the years? I'm going to make it a twofold question, because I want to just understand as well, within Social Pantry, what's your journey been like for sustainability?
Yeah. So we, years ago, before it was trendy or cool, or people kind of understood it, I'd be in tastings and I'd be like, oh, so it's zero waste. And they'd be like, oh, you don't get it out of the bin. And I'd say, no, the food doesn't go in the bin. Kind of zero waste, mindset. So I think it's great that there's, the perspective has shifted and people really ask, people want to know about it. They want to know, your supply chains. Is it sustainable? Where's it coming from? What are we eating? What are we doing with the waste? So the clients are really asking the right questions. They're totally engaged. They're there. There's also kind of, rules in place and regulations. And when you're, trying to win new business, there's kind of, levels that need to be achieved of sustainability and how you're operating, which is fantastic. You want there to be permanent pressure on you as an operator to keep operating more sustainably, I think personally. Because I think the world we're living in is definitely kind of, we're definitely not doing everything we can. And if every operator was kind of doing absolutely everything they can across the industries, I'm sure we'd start to see a bit of a difference. So it's great that everybody's asking the questions. In terms of our journey, we have always had zero waste mindset. We've always been very kind of considered, and we've always been kind of learning. It was about 3 years ago that I brought on Nash, our sustainability consultant, because I felt that there was just so much out there that I wasn't an expert enough. I wasn't going to be able to train quickly enough to kind of understand it all. So we paid Nash. She's absolutely brilliant. And she's been taking us through the B Corp accreditation process, which is really exciting. But I think ultimately for us, we've always just said, I mean, our roadmap's on our website, but we always try and do what we can within our budgets. And they're restricted in terms of our time and our budget. Like, we haven't got all the money in the world and we haven't got all the time in the world. And it's something that might work at the cafe doesn't work rolling out across events. So we've also, but it might work in the workplace. So we're kind of, for us, it's quite complex, but we are doing what we can. And if we can't do it now, we've put it in year 5 for our roadmap, and we'll be totally honest about that. We'll be transparent, and we want people to kind of come and say, okay, what have you learned? What's easy? Like, we put in a food digester at the units actually 4 years ago, and it takes all the food waste and it spits it out as water. So anything that doesn't go to stock or doesn't get used for menus, it takes that into it. And actually now I think a number of the other caterers have got it. So you're kind of like, okay, great. So where we're sharing our journeys, hopefully we're kind of inspiring some other operators as well. And they know that we haven't got endless budgets, but we definitely allocate budget, and we have over the years. And I think that's obviously I wouldn't do it any differently, but that, I suppose that is important to note that we're doing it when we've got quite tight margins as well, I suppose.
And it's great that you've dedicated resource in that area now, because it's only going to get, I feel it's going to just get more and more focus from clients, and the expectation is going to be there to be at the forefront of sustainability.
You're completely right, Maxine. I think it is. And if anyone isn't on the bandwagon, then they're where have they been living? Get, under a rock, like they need to jump on it. And even if it's not, not possible, just, I suppose bit by bit, I suppose that's where, and also just educating ourselves and the team. We've kind of put a lot of investment into that. So when you start Social Pantry, you have a sustainability training. But things like Nopla, they're incredible kind of seaweed packaging. They just won the Earthshot prize. They came in and saw us kind of 3 months ago, and the team were fascinated. They kind of got it. They were like, oh, okay, right. Because actually sometimes all the other recyclables and, biodegradables actually are sprayed with a material that actually it isn't biodegradable, but it passes the European law test to say it is that. So actually but how are we meant to know that? So I suppose it's looking to the experts and saying, okay, can you tell us exactly what to do? And can you keep updating us? But hearing from Nopla themselves about their journey and what they were doing was brilliant. And we're trying to now kind of work that into fully across the board at Social Pantry, which does entail having some bespoke products made. So we're just looking at our budgets and can we do that? So I think we're constantly evolving, but if I could do it all, I would. But we're constantly evolving and doing what we can, and within our capacities.
Just take it's a bit at a time. The journeys, you don't literally run the whole 26 miles, do you? A marathon, you train, you're literally just taking a bit at a time and building up as time goes. Can you give our audience your top 3 recipes for success working with your clients, consultants, and if you ever partner with other operators, what are your 3 recipes for success?
Oh, okay. What are our 3 recipes for success? So I think ultimately, in terms of kind of in business, so just having a brilliant product, I think, is really important. So people will come back to you time and time again if you've got a great product. People will tell other people about your product, and if you're always delivering a good product, I suppose it builds a really loyal client, whether that's kind of consultants or agents or end customer. So product is one of them. I think just being really true to who you are, so your kind of ethos, I think is really important, and kind of never swaying from that. So with us, the ex-offenders years ago, I wouldn't dare mention it to people because they then wouldn't use Social Pantry. We were just too small a brand. Whereas actually now I'm quite loud and proud about it. I'm like, no, we do use ex-offenders. They might not be on your event, but they're definitely in the kitchens. We also have a prison, cafe in a prison. So like, ultimately the money being spent with Social Pantry is being indirectly spent on ex-offender training and development and sustainability. So it is kind of doing good, and I think kind of sticking to that over the years is kind of made us definitely part of who we are. And then I suppose just really honest, being really honest is important. Honest with kind of, the suppliers that you're using, the prices you're charging, the messaging, and clear conversations when things are brilliant and ultimately, feeding back in a constructive way when we haven't got things right. Or so I'd say kind of just honest communication throughout.
And it's just amazing when you're transparent and people want they want to know what they're getting, who they're working with,
Yeah.
and the social agenda now is strong. A bit like sustainability, it's stronger than ever. So being in the position that you are, just keep going, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you,
keep going.
Maxine. Thank you.
Okay, so tell us about just looking back at your career. What accomplishment or contribution are you most proud of,
Oh
and what
God.
kind of legacy would you love to leave in the industry?
Yeah, I was thinking about saying it. So I think, yeah, most proud of. I think obviously we've done some amazing events, and I always end up talking about ex-offenders, which totally detracts from an incredible team of people that I employ who do insane, memorable events that have the wow factor, that are just so incredible, and delivering endless contract catering, which is not easy, and brilliant kind of restaurants. So I've got a team who are being always, it's all down to really talented individuals. But I suppose ultimately there's a lot of companies also doing that who are great, but the one thing they're not doing is employing ex-offenders. So I think kind of really tapping into the prison system. And recently Wandsworth Prison phoned me directly. I'm on the employers board there, which has obviously taken years and years and years of
Yeah,
ex-offender work. And they kind of, I'm on the one, they said, we've got a gentleman coming out, will you employ him? So we had a Zoom call with him on the Thursday. On the Friday he came to Social Pantry, and on the Monday he started his job. And
wow.
so far so good. He's about to have his third 3-month review, where actually the prison team come and see him for a coffee, and he bakes the cakes and we all have a coffee together, which is like a real first marker of like, hey, great, you survived the first few months, this is fantastic, let's see what the future holds for them. So I think that's something, and that's just one recent example, but it's really nice that the prisons kind of just give us a call. It
Yeah,
used to be through the charities or through kind of governing bodies, but actually now we're just kind of quite well known for it. So I think that kind of leaves a bit of a legacy. And ultimately, hopefully, if people were to remember anything, it was that as a, I don't know, a 26-year-old, 28-year-old kind of person starting out in business, I was kind of brave enough to say, sure, I'll employ an ex-offender, why not?
yeah,
And giving them that opportunity, and hopefully that would inspire other people in other companies, bigger companies that have got more than just a small HR department or a lot more
yeah,
structure or a lot more budget, to actually say, oh, do you know what, if she can do it, why can't we? So I think that for me is I suppose the bit that I'm most proud of, because it's probably been the hardest bit, and also it's definitely the most rewarding, but also the fact that no one else is doing it yet, or not doing it to the extent that we
the
are, is actually
extent.
quite
Yeah.
satisfying. Yeah, it's
Do
quite.
you know, and what don't never under, I'm sure you don't, but it's easy to underestimate just what you're doing for those offenders as well,
Yeah,
because they don't get opportunities. I remember many years ago, but I had experiences with ex-offenders, and it's really hard to just shake that social stigma that
yeah,
they've come
totally.
out, and then oh my gosh, and building that trust, but also when they want to genuinely change or genuinely work. And I do remember it's so difficult to get employment,
Yeah.
and prove yourself. So what you're doing is really
Yeah.
special, and
Yeah,
you know,
thanks,
it
Maxine,
really
that's
is.
kind. Yeah, people always say to me, "Oh, what's a successful employment?" And I'm like, well, ultimately, for some of them, like a couple of years is successful, and that's great for, for anybody. But
Yeah,
actually, for some of them, kind of just completing 2 weeks and coming in and doing that and just giving them that experience is actually like more than they've ever had in their life. And although that might not be seen as a success, like either internally with us or externally, like just for them, like we've definitely shown them a way of like a team that would, really care about them as an individual. And
yeah,
they've often never, some of them have never had that, but also they've just had an experience, which also a lot of people have never had. And actually, working within a business in food, a food business, actually they can take that experience and use it. So I think, yeah, sometimes, but maybe when it's more challenging, it's good to remember that.
yeah. So just before we end, what's the best way for any of our listeners to to contact you if they have events that they want to they want you to cater? What's the
Yes,
best way of
please. So yeah, I think on our website is socialpantry.co.uk, and there's an inquiries on there. And we've got a brilliant team at the end of the inquiries inbox. So if there's anything about kind of events or workplace catering, of course, please get in touch. But also if they wanted to kind of chat about prison leaver employment, or come into our prison and meet our guys behind bars, or come to anything like that, like they're more than welcome to reach out.
Thank you so much, Alex.
No,
We're at I was going to say just a quick rapid fire
yeah,
round, and then this will be the end of our Consultants Corner
yeah,
2023. So
yeah.
tea or coffee?
Oh, tea.
Tea. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird these days. I'm quite old, Maxine. If only back in the day it would have been night owl. Yeah.
And one word that best describes your work ethic?
Oh, determined.
Okay. And if you could have dinner with a historical figure, who would it be?
Oh gosh. Oh, I should have thought about this. Oh, the
Okay.
Queen.
The Queen. Oh
The
wow.
Queen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's a big
Alex, I'd love to have you on again in the new year, next
Yeah,
year,
would love
to talk
to.
about your
No, thank you
journey,
so much.
how everything's going and developing with Social Pantry. So let's definitely connect again for 2024. I want to hear all about Social Pantry and what
Yes,
you've been up
please.
to.
Maxine, I'd love that. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. You've been so kind having me. I'd love to come back. Yes, please.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much.
No worries.
For our audience, thank you for listening. This has been Consultants Corner, our final for 2023, and we look forward to seeing you all again in 24. Alex, thank you so much for being on with us this afternoon. Take care and have a great Christmas.
And you, Maxine, thank you. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye-bye. Just gotta jump on to Google. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. 5 minutes late. Damn. In maps. Let's go. Join. Come on. What? Start.